Happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to your Tuesday lighting critique. So we've got a bunch of images to go through today. So we are going to do these in the inverse order. We're going to start with the end of the alphabet and work our way forward. So we're going to start with Will and take a look at his Sir Desmond Rotundus inside our Victorian set. I think it's a Victorian set from Kitbash 3D. So very cool stuff. I love the color scheme. A lot of coolness with little splashes of warmth in the windows. You're getting good shaping on the character. Lots of good stuff going on. But let's dive into it a little bit and see some areas that I think that we can improve. So full disclosure, you mentioned that that you were referencing this as well. This is actually lit by Sarah Tar, our asset creator. This was just during our testing phase. She lit that one, and I was like, oh, that looks great. So we just used that in our promo images. So it's a great start. I know that you said you were working with this Dakota Fanning, and I can't tell who that actor is. Is that Channing Tatum? I can't tell. But this was like your main reference point on the character. And I think this is really good because this is just like really soft, subtle key lights with allowing sections of the face to go into darkness. It's not quite as stark and contrasty as this one. We're not pushing the brights quite as much, but it's allowing some more dark shapes in there as well. This is a really nice reference with the, like I said, with that specularity on the wing. Just some like little bits of hit on the black fur is really nice. But all of these have, or a lot of these have this combination of like cool with a little bit of the warm incandescent light mixed in there. So I think that's really nice. So going back into yours, I think there's a few things that we can do to improve the image. Number one is I do think that we can allow for some darkness to creep in on the screen left side of the face. Right now, the screen right and screen left side of the face are pretty balanced in the amount of light that they're receiving. I almost want there to be light creeping in this way and allowing this to go a little bit darker. So pretty much all the way down this side of him, we can allow a little bit more darkness in this region. In terms of the specularity on the bat itself, on his torso, it's looking really good. But we're missing some. I would like to try and push some more of it into his wing. Like this side, it's pretty flat overall in terms of the specularity. It's a pretty broad specular highlight. I'd like to see if we could tighten that down a little bit. His hat additionally looks a little bit dusty too. I'd like to see the black point on like this kind of center area of his hat get a little bit darker. I'm fine with these rim lights on it, but I think that the core value can go down just a little bit. In terms of the set, in terms of the surroundings, I think, like I said, I love this reflection off the ground. I love the color scheme. The biggest thing I would have you work on is, looking at this reference in this shot, this building isn't that far away, but you can already start to see a little bit of aerial perspective, a little atmospheric fall off, a little fog coming in on it. I think we can do the same thing with this. I would like to see a little bit of haze, a cooler haze being brought in on that. That'll allow the darker shapes of the character to pop through. And then you can kind of fade it off as this suspension comes forward a little bit there. But yeah, I think that's a really good progress for our next step. And I think that'll get us to where we're going. Next up, we have Sooner with your update here. A lot of progress here. The biggest things are, you've got that volumetric falling back behind the character. You're matching up the wood tones a little bit better. Everything else is looking really good. A few things to work on. The shadow that's being cast along here is very, very sharp. If this is interior lighting, if this is kind of window lighting, you have to think about the light passing through a pane of glass on the window, and that actually will diffuse the light a little bit and soften it down. And even if this were outside, this is going to be a little bit sharp of a shadow. And it's more than just being about the shadow quality. You can see it here too. It's about like the overall light quality, and that it's very, very harsh on him. So I actually think the light can soften, and then the light can tone down in value too, because you can see like some of these areas of the white are really starting to clip out. So I think that you can tone that down slightly. I would continue playing just because of the shape of the puppet here. I think that the knitted creatures, I think you can continue to try and maybe even swing that key light around just a little bit more, because what that can do is even elongate the shadow even more, get more variation coming across here, because it's good and you can see that it's brighter and dimming down, but it would, if by rotating the light around a little more, you could even get a more drastic variation as we go across there. I love this. It looks like you have, because you have this object down below, what you're getting up underneath here is some really, really, really nice bounce light. I think that's looking really good, and it's a nice, strong characteristic of the piece. One thing you want to watch out for, check the color on these little, I guess they're hair. I don't know what else to call them. Little fuzzies coming off them. They look much darker than the fabric itself, and they're just a lot grayer. Like up in here, I would expect them to be the same color as the yellow, but they almost look like gray hair. Outside of that, it's totally fine for now, but just at some point we'll need to smooth out those buttons. They're a little polygonal, and you can kind of see their sharp edges here, so something to keep in mind there. And yeah, I think that's the big thing for now. Yeah, softening the key shape, softening the value, getting those hairs to look a little better and to match up with the fur down below, and then yeah, we'll see where we land with that. All right, Rick, good progress here overall. Starting to sit in the scene, starting to feel a little bit better. It's interesting. So I do not normally add this amount of green light in the bounce, but I actually think it's working pretty well for you. So I will say to go ahead and leave that as is. In terms of, I'm wondering if you can add a little bit of translucency to the shader on the shawl, because it'd be really, really nice to get a little touch of that purple kind of shining through there, because it's a little what I call bulletproof in that it's a thin veil, but it seems to be blocking light entirely. I think the character lighting is looking pretty good. You got to watch out for these sharp shadows from the shadow from her hand onto her face. I would like for that to be a little bit softer, and if you can nudge the light around, like back behind just a little bit more, this will creep that shadow off of her face. And I think that will look a little bit better without adjusting the lighting setup too much. The other thing that I want you to work on is the value of these flowers. It's really hard to tell with the lower resolution, but it looks like a lot of these flowers in this region here are getting a little dingy, a little dark, and could use some either ambient light or just some gamma shifting or just some more light hits on it overall. They're looking really good around here. It's just that this main strip that she's looking at, it would be nice if we got some more value in there, so to kind of lift those up. Same thing with these here. These are like, pull these. These here are looking a little green. Let's see, oop, is that what I wanted? They're looking a little bit green. And let's see, a little more red. And then we can goose those up a little bit. So I think like trying to get the flowers more into this bright bouquet-y type feeling would go a long way here. I'll give you a little before and after. So even that's still a little bit green. Yeah, something more along these lines for those types of flowers. So making good progress. This is definitely a step in the right direction. But yeah, I'm excited to see what you get in your next iteration. So Rick, you also have this pool reference here. So lots of blues, purples, very cool color palette. I love it. I think it's great. Little reds creeping in there as well. In this one, I think it's a very different vibe right now than we're seeing in this reference. This reference is nothing but happiness, right? Happiness, glowiness, goodness. In here, it's a little darker. It's a little sinister. I would expect, if we wanted to get that to be in that brightness range, I would expect there to be like more brightness inside of here. Move that down just a little bit. You know, really allow this blue light to kind of bounce around the space a little bit. And also, like the yellow banners at the top kind of mess with our color scheme a little bit. I think that you could actually work on, like, think of the balloons as a, you know, if you want to pull that color palette and just make, vary them up a little bit, too, I think that would help, is like just like a kind of a whole mess of flags up there of different colors that are part of that color scheme. The red characters are, I think they're in there for scale reference. I would consider, if it was me when I lit this, I would actually pull those guys out, just because they're a little odd. But if you want to keep them in, it's fine. For me, it takes away any of the believability of the scene that they're just like these 7 or 8 perfectly human-sized, shaped, red, like bright red characters in there. But if you want to leave them in, I would say go for it. But yeah, so brightening it up overall, adding some of that more blue value, changing the flag colors to match the color scheme a little more. Also, I really want to feel that the light is coming in more from this side of the room. Like I don't feel that the wall is brighter here and dropping off. I think we could feel that a little bit more strongly, like a real sense of the direction of the light. Like, sure, yes, these lights are on up here and they're going to fill in a little bit, but they can't hold a candle to the amount of light that sunlight is. So I'd like to see that scrape against that back wall a little bit as well. Also, the framing is a little odd. I would maybe want to tilt it or shift it down just a little bit, like seeing this much of the ceiling taking up, the ceiling goes down to almost halfway on the frame. Actually, it goes down past halfway because like this is the ceiling portion and then this is everything else. So I want to see less of the ceiling, more of the scene. Yeah. All right, Pavel, great work here. This is looking really pretty. I think you can warm up your scatter light coming in. I think that other than that, I think it's looking really well. It feels like it would be nice if there was just like, because it's kind of a warm, sunny outdoor scene. Like if you kept it on this cooler plane up here, I could see it being cooler, but like it's kind of a weird one, right? So the amount of light that would cause that amount of blowout would be sunlight, and the sunlight is warm, and so the light rays that are coming in would be a little bit more on the warm side. I would also pull back just the slightest touch on this blowout on his head. If we could like maybe pick up a little bit of his silhouette there, it feels like at a glance, it just feels like his head's got a weird kind of shape cut out of it. And it's not necessarily reading as a blown out bright bit. Any other place, like on the shoulder, it's fine. I'm happy with it anywhere else. It's just something about getting the silhouette of the head to read a little bit more is helpful. Everything else is looking really, really well. I love, like, again, the lampshade, the amount of light that's hitting these books and just kind of picking that up. Looking at the original, I do think you can keep a little more value in the spines of the books. I don't think that that's going to get too distracting over there. So I would bring back that specular highlight a little bit in the rims there, or in the picking up the text there. But yeah, other than that, I think it's looking really great. I would make those tweaks, and then for you, I would try a totally another version of this shot. Maybe there's a TV on in the room. Maybe there's, I don't know. So I would push yourself to try and get really create a really unique lighting scenario for this guy. All right, so Kat, we've got your render here. We've got some reference images. It's kind of what you use for the background plate. It's just lots of skin tone characters outside. And by skin tone, I mean like it's just kind of a skin tone analysis. So these characters are a little cooler in their skin tones. These are getting more warmth in their bounce light, and a lot of that's just the color. You can see it in the trees and in the background. It's just like the overall color palette of the image itself. But I want you to look at at two things. One is the key to fill ratio, how bright the keys are versus how bright the fills are. They're a little different between the two images, but just something to be aware of. And then also paying attention to the way that the skin looks in the shadow region, right? Like this kid's a little bit paler. These parents are a little more tan. These characters are again, it's so desaturated in the color grading that it's hard to tell. But one thing that we're seeing, these characters too, I forgot these. So a lot of darker, more dark skinned characters here. You're getting more of the shaping here, but like really pay attention to the color of the skin and the shadow, and just how like bright and how much value there is. Love this shot. This is so cool. It's one of my favorite lighting scenarios of light coming in from behind, hitting an object close to their face, and just bright light, like bouncing light up in there. It almost looks like there's a light source in that book. Very, very cool. So for with all that in mind, for yours, I think the skin tones, the colors of the skin aren't quite right yet. Like in the key side, they're getting very bright, and if I just look at that, it almost looks white and very, very bright. Whereas over here, you can still get a sense of the warmth. Same thing in here. Like even on the brightest side, we're still getting the hero color of the character. And this is kind of getting washed out a little bit. And the fill side of the face is a little bit red and a little blue. Also, it could come up a little bit more. And that, like, she's pretty evenly lit because she's getting all fill light. But think about this as just being the bounce light. Think about all of this in here as just being the bounce light. And so by just being the bounce light in there, you'll actually wouldn't quite get down to this level of darkness. And the other thing that's making it look even darker is how bright the eye is and the teeth, which are fine. But in this case, because the skin is more mid-tony, the brightness of the eye actually makes it look a little bit darker. So I would really pay attention to go back and like really analyze the color of the key side and the color of the fill side that you're going for. Maybe put it in a separate doc and just use that as reference, because I think that because this is almost looking like a more of a bruisiness than anything else. But this is a great start. Also, last thing I wanted to say too is we're gonna have to find a way to get some good shaping in the hair. Maybe some specular highlights, maybe a little bit of value shift in there. Right now it's a little bit flat. So at some point when we work through this, we'll just need to find some more shaping in the hair. But really cool start. I think once we get that, we'll be able to hit some other notes and really have a great project on our hands. All right, Jordan. So we've got old versus new here. So this is new, previous, new, previous. So one of the things about the new one, again, we've got this little bit of light creeping around there. Again, it's a little. It feels like, because like I don't fully try. Maybe this is like an L-shaped window over here, and there's some light creeping in there. I don't know. Maybe I can get myself to believe that, but I really feel it more like that would fall into shadow. And there would just be like rim light here, and then he's in a position where he can really kind of creep around the edge there. I would pull some of the volumetrics off of the character, pull it back behind him a little bit, because it's lifting his dark values a lot, and a little bit murking him up a little bit and flattening him out. Also, similar to what we were seeing in the other version of this, I think that the overall haze is a little bit on the cool side. I would like to see that go a little bit warmer. And I'm just going to do it kind of overall to the scene. So maybe something more along those lines in the environment, something a little warmer to simulate the sunlight kind of shining through there. And then, so watch out for this, sunlight shining through. I do want to go a little brighter on this bulb. I know we're kind of pushing it back and forth, but I think that can go a touch brighter there. And then if you can get more translucency on these curtains, because it's really nice what you have right now, but it is very sharp, and I want to see a little bit more, like a little more glow in that region there. So maybe not quite as bright at the brightest point, and then if you can broaden that out a little bit, that would be great. All right, now we got Diana. We got 2 of the TV images. So I think these have really come a long way. I do still think that we could push a little bit more in the high ends of the image. Because again, like if you look, there's just not a lot of super brights in there. I do think that we can push both of these a little bit further that way. is probably more effective in your comp. And just looking like I just want this light to go brighter, and you can limit it just to that, but I do think the overall scene could help. But definitely make that light just a little touch brighter. So obviously the other stuff, I think it's looking really good. You just want to watch out for the texture on this table. It's a little repeated, and it's kind of the grain texture on wooden tables has a tendency to go that way and not this way. So just something to be aware of there, and that might help with the tiling that we're seeing out of that, because you can really read the tiles on that. And then lastly, just watch out for it also feels like the arm of this chair is like a different color than the body, but that might just be you know what it is? That's just this green haze coming through. That's fine, but that threw me off there for a second. I love these specular highlights you're getting in here. If there's any way, this is like super bonus points, but like, to get a little bit of that specularity maybe in like, I'm like hedging whether I shouldn't say this, but like a little bit of that in the wallpaper. Like if these stripes were, I mean, it depends on if you already have that split out, you might be able to get a little more specularity like that. It's kind of a textured wallpaper there. And then for this other one, yeah, this is all looking great. And I'm just thinking just to get a little more variation back there. And adjusting the characters, making that a little brighter. But other than that, I think this is coming together really, really well. And your attic scene. Let's see. So there's the reference. Here's the shot. So one of the things about the reference is super. It's great. It's coming along really well. Lots of good shaping. Love the dark contrast here in the foreground. It's nice that we're getting a lot of brightness outside. If we look at some of this, some of these references, the interior space is getting a little bit darker, especially like up around the corners. And I'm wondering if we can't push, I mean, like, yes, this is darker in the foreground, but I wonder if we can't push a little bit more brightness in the brights and contrast in the darks. Because like if you look at the ground here versus what we're seeing, like, well, I guess it's not the ground, but what we're seeing like here, like this is getting a little bit brighter. So I think you can push the key hit on the ground a little bit more. Let's go back. But I think that'll be the biggest adjustment that you want to make. You also may want to tone down this door and make that a little bit of a different color, because it is very bright given the surroundings. And I would consider maybe toning that down just a little bit. But everything else is looking really good. Annabelle, this is looking great. Everything's nicely balanced. Everything's looking really good. I like that we've now incorporated some cooler tones back behind her. I think that's working really, really well. The sand looks great. Watch out for this hard line right here. But honestly, other than that, I'm not seeing too much I would like to see adjusted. Other than, you know, maybe just darkening that little bit back behind her head to make sure that her headline really reads, her profile really reads up there. And then maybe just a little more saturation and value into these flowers here, just in the screen left side. But honestly, this is all nitpicky stuff. I think this is looking really great. This is a really, really nice addition to the series. And lastly, we have Adrian. So we have your A version, which is a little brighter, and your B version. I like the A version a little better. And you were asking me, asked a great question, and I try and do more of this. I try not to just tell you to do things without giving reasons, and I probably missed that with yours. So the reason why I wanted to lift the midtones was that the hero color was kind of lying in those midtones, and by lifting that up a little bit, we're able to, and because when they get a little bit darker, they, like yellows and super saturated colors tend to just go dingy and you kind of lose their color overall. So by lifting the midtones up, you can actually kind of restore that a little bit and really get a good sense for the color of that object. So it was more about getting that color to pop a little bit more than anything else. I think your shaping was good. It's just that if it's not in a brighter realm, it'll just kind of feel a little bit dingy. All right, so that's it for today. If you all have any questions, I look forward to seeing your future posts and what you got tomorrow. All right, happy lighting, everybody.